What's going on, guys? Okay, so I want to get something clear. This is going to be a video. I know it's not a modeling video. I know it's not what you expect. I just want to try something new, okay? So today we're going to be reviewing this episode, one of my favorite episodes of all time in the entirety of the Thomas series. It's called Old Reliable Edward. And for those wondering, yes, I'll be still doing model making videos on how I make certain characters and models. Don't worry, I'm still gonna get back to that, but I want to see where this goes. I want to have some fun here, okay? The reason I want to pretty much break down why this episode's my favorite episode in the series, because, you know, it's been on my mind for a long time now, a very long time now. So let's just get straight into it. Old Reliable Edward is one of those episodes that pretty much prove to the audience as well as some of the characters that Edward might be old but still is a very useful engine. Of course, we've had episodes in the past where Edward had to prove to the audience as well as some of the characters that he may be old but still is very reliable, such as Edward's exploit, Edward the Great, and Old Iron. But what sets this episode apart from the rest is that only Gordon seems to be the one that's bashing Edward for being old, slow, and unreliable. The episode starts off as any other episode that would start off a brand new season, introduces the characters, and it introduces the main character of the episode. This episode shows Edward going about his day, doing his jobs, having a good time, and, you know, enjoying his life. But of course, this dude, Gordon, comes up out of nowhere with his ugly ass grin and starts roasting the mess out of him for absolutely no reason.
You're not very reliable.
What do you mean?
You know, breaking down all the time.
I don't even know what Gordon's talking about. I'm pretty sure the last time Edward even came close to anything relating to breaking down was the season 9 episode, what is it called? Saving Edward. And he technically didn't even break down in that episode. Later that day, Gordon pulls the express as usual. As he approaches Gordon's hill, he in his, you know what, hold up, stop. I swear these engines have some of the most inconsistent vision in the world. As he's nearing the top of the hill, he notices something red flagging in the wind, thinking it's a danger signal. But it turns out to be a pair of someone's wet doubloons. Naturally, Gordon stops, sees that it's just a pair of pants, and tries to continue on his way. But for the fact that the express is, ungodly heavy, he's having difficulties pulling off on his own. The news soon reaches Edward that he has to go and help Gordon up his own hill.
Gordon is stuck on his hill. He needs a banker engine to give him a push.
Really, bitch? Edward is a little bit frustrated about this, not for the fact that he has to go help Gordon up the hill, but earlier that day, Gordon just insulted the fuck out of Edward for givingly no reason. Now he has to be the one to go save his life. While Gordon is impatiently waiting for Edward to help him up his own hill, a few characters come by to pretty much insult Gordon for, you know, something. He deserves it. He deserves it. Emily comes by and pretty much calls him a lazy bastard.
Having a rest, are you, Gordon?
Then Thomas comes by with Annie and Clarabelle like the absolute giga chat he is. And, okay, so like, hold on. This part is absolutely hilarious to me. Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle are relatively extremely light compared to Gordon and the Express. And he stops on this man's hill just to insult him and then to carry on his way easy as pie. That's very hilarious to me. While this is happening, Edward pulls up and is ready to help Gordon up the hill. Now here's why I have a problem with Gordon. Gordon is still absolutely rude as hell to Edward for seemingly no reason. He calls him old and slow, even though Edward is about to sit here and go red in the cheeks to help this big blue booty hole up the hill.
You're so old and slow, I'm surprised Sir Topham Hatt keeps you on.
Edward is a real one in this episode. He is literally not putting up with anyone's shit, but still goes to help his friends. After just being insulted out of nowhere, Edward still, with no hesitation, pushes Gordon up the hill. They get to the top, Gordon doesn't say thank you, and Edward is rather upset about this. After a hard day's work, Edward then goes to the shunting yard to consult Thomas about what just happened on the hill. He's fed up with being insulted rather than thanked for all of his hard work by Gordon.
He doesn't even say thank you when I give him a push.
Thomas listens and understands Edward and comes up with a plan to pretty much teach Gordon a lesson. And right here is where I congratulate the writers for not saying the most predictable line in the world.
Maybe it's time we taught that big engine a lesson.
They could have easily said something like, teach this big engine a little lesson. but they did it, and I love that. The details of the plan is pretty much withheld from the audience, but it's a great payoff later. We then return to Tidmouth Sheds, where our main 8 are pretty much roasting Gordon for getting stuck on his own hill for what, the 37th time?
And the only reason he stopped was because he saw some red pants.
Gordon then says he didn't really need Edward's help and could have easily scaled the hill on his very own.
I didn't really need your help, Edward. You just happened to be there, that's all.
Of course, all the other characters know that that's complete and utter bullshit, but Gordon continues to brag about how fast he is and doesn't need any help at all. Now, this is where things get good. This is where things took a turn. When I first saw this episode, I was not expecting anything like this. Thomas then challenges Gordon to a race, but it wasn't exactly a race, and he did not say race, and I love that the writing team did this.
I'd like to see you go faster than me. You just try and follow me tomorrow morning.
Gordon, along with the other characters, then interpret this as Thomas challenging Gordon to a race, which understandably is by far the stupidest thing Thomas could have possibly done. But Thomas knew what he was doing, and apparently Edward did too, but nobody else. The very next morning, Thomas and Gordon meet at Knapford Station, ready to depart and set on their journeys. As agreed, Gordon gives Thomas a 10-minute head start because he believes that he's going to be able to overtake Thomas very quickly.
You'd better get going, Thomas. I did promise you a 10-minute head start, remember?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are still on Giga Chad vibes because Thomas is now setting off full force in the plan, and Annie and Clarabelle are still none the wiser of what's going on. Thomas is now well ahead on the main line, and Annie and Clarabelle are now getting a little worried because Thomas is not speeding up and has no idea what's going on. They then see Gordon thundering down the line, catching up with Thomas very quickly, and they're starting to panic. But Thomas, he's keeping a cool head. This is why I love this episode. Switches onto Gordon's express line and then causes Gordon to slow down. Annie, Clarabelle, and Gordon are now confused on why Thomas is now in front of Gordon on his line, and Gordon is demanding Thomas to move off of his line so that Gordon can overtake Thomas.
Pull onto the other track, Thomas. Express coming through.
Now here's where Thomas's plan comes into full effect and Gordon gets slapped in the face with the realization. Watching this episode on first watch, I was absolutely, I don't even know, I was overtaken with all these different types of exciting emotions that was like, yo, this cheeky blue bastard just tricked Gordon and pretty much everyone else into what they thought was a race, but ended up being this huge plan to pretty much get Gordon stuck on the hill again. Gordon is whimpering and crying and pretty much begging Thomas to speed up because they're approaching Gordon's hill, and you, me, and him, we all know what happens when Gordon slows down on his hill.
No! I'm stuck again.
It looks like I'm going faster than you after all.
And an absolute Sigma male play on Thomas's part. This dude, with coaches, can come to a complete stop on Gordon's hill and proceed on his way like an absolute Giga Chad while Gordon is being stranded and left behind. Thomas then leaves Gordon on the hill like an absolute bitch to sit there and feel bad for himself. Edward then trundles up along Gordon and asks him if he's done following Thomas, when Gordon replies all rudely and tells him that he needs to push him up the hill. Gordon, come on, Gordon. Edward ain't no fucking... Come on now. Edward then roasts the shit out of Gordon and then puffs away like an absolute, guess what, Giga Chad. Gordon pleads at Edward to come save him off the hill, but Edward, you know, obviously leaves that man in the dust as well, and then the story ends. Nah, I'm just kidding. He comes back and pushes Gordon over the hill and demands a thank you out of this man. And this dude folds and says thank you, and I'm pretty sure Gordon learns a very valuable lesson. One thing I really don't understand is that Edward has helped Gordon over this hill a multitude of times, and Gordon, A, still calls Edward fucking old and reliable, and B, continues to admit that he doesn't need his help.
Edward is a waste of steam, he sniffed.
Come on now, Gordon. What I love about this episode is that it doesn't have orchestral music or over-the-top visuals or an action-packed story. That's not what this episode is about, and I love it for that. This episode simply tells a very good story about character development of our main characters, specifically, Gordon. This story feels like it's something that would naturally happen in the world of Thomas, whether the cameras were recording this or not. And it feels wholesome and real, and like Gordon really learns a lesson here. And I'm pretty sure he never does call Edward old or unreliable ever again after this point. This isn't an episode about Thomas, Gordon, or Edward. This is an episode about everyone involved, and it tells an amazing, funny, powerful story about characters with flaws and how one grows from them. Thomas isn't the main face of the first episode of a brand new season. It's about Thomas and his friends. One thing I do find quite funny is that Gordon gets pretty much stopped and stuck on his hill twice in this episode. Obviously it's happened before, but Percy has seemingly come to almost the same exact complete stop and manages to make it over the hill. Who's the real old and unreliable engine now, Gordon? Come on. Like, what? This episode uses nothing but its characters and its brilliant writing to tell an amazing story. And that alone is why this is the best Thomas and Friends episode ever. Real quick before I go, I just want to ask you guys again to leave it in the comments if this is the type of videos you guys want to see me make in future or anything related to that, or if these are not the videos you want to see me make, recommend them in the comments below. Just know that any model making videos of any kind, making models, replicas, or sets, those are going to be coming in the near future. Just those are going to take a lot longer than these types of videos, so let me know